Wea, and welcome to our FishCAST seminar series. This is our third speaker of our fall series, and I'm just really happy that we have him here today, but I'm going to turn over the introductions to Dominic, who will do a much better job than I can. But I did want to just welcome you all and to say, well, I'm actually not in Windsor today. Today I'm on the unceded territory of the Wabanaki Nation, as well as the Nedakina Nation as well. That's now known as Southern Quebec. My closest town here is Coaticook, which is the Abenaki name for the river of the land of pine trees. And what a better descriptor that can tie in land with water and our place-based connections to our land. And I'm just so privileged to be here. It's a little bit overcast, but we do have a river pine that's around us. And so that's Coaticook for those of you who are interested in. But you know what? FishCAST is actually not administered from here. It's administered from Windsor or Wawaitanang, which means where the river bends. And it is from the unceded the traditional territories of the Three Fires Confederacy, which include the Potawatomi, the Odawa, and the Ojibwe peoples. We have been so fortunate so far in our seminar series, as well as through our AGM, to invite people who are giving us this personal look of their personal journey as they've been going from their interests, their life interests, and their life's experiences and the career choices that they have made. And I'm just so grateful in terms of the information that have been provided and the emotions that are attached to that. And I know I've said this before, but I think it's just such a wonderful way to really show what the careers are like, because these are not necessarily careers for people, but it's more like their calling, it's their vocation. It's because there's this deep feeling between the land and the water. And I'm so grateful to just hold space with our seminar series speakers. And I hope you are as well, because I have been learning so much, not just about the work that and the accomplished work that our seminar series speakers are doing, but them as people as well. And I think that reflects really nicely in terms of what FishCAST is trying to do with our training program and with our wonderful trainees. And it's to have it more of a rather than a linear journey, but a circular one, as we learn how to blend multiple ways of knowing with land and water and different ways of learning and doing, because at the end of the day, we really are trying to break down the systemic barriers that are in our field, or at least learn the tools to do that, to be more aware, take a decolonized approach to the research that we do, and to really find the people and our future collaborators that will stand with us, and that we can stand with our collaborators as well, because that is our role, that's our shared value system, that's our shared history and our shared futures together, all as treaty land inhabitants. So Miigwech, thank you very much. Merci tout le monde. And now it's my pleasure to move it over and introduce you to Dominic Rumble, who is an amazing FishCAST trainee. And Dominic will be giving the introduction to our esteemed seminar speaker today. So you know what? Why don't you join me in welcoming Dominic? Let's just start this domino effect of welcoming so everyone feels welcomed here today. All right. Thank you, everyone. Miigwech.
Thank you, Tina. So hello, bonjour, buzu, and a special shrimei to our speaker today, Craig Paterson. I am beyond honored to get the opportunity to introduce Craig to everyone today. I have been very lucky to work with Craig as my supervisor, my mentor, my colleague, and dare I say, a good friend. Craig grew up in Swansea, Wales, where he studied law, geography, and world development, and went on to complete a Bachelor of Science in Police Sciences, where he crafted the perfect murder, and don't ask, he won't tell you what it is. In 2012, Craig moved to Canada, where he realized that his true passion was for the natural world, and policing wasn't going to satisfy that. So he enrolled in the Fish and Wildlife program at Fleming College. Initially, Craig hoped to combine his knowledge of law and the natural world to become a conservation officer, but this all changed in 2017, the year he graduated and took on his very first job in the environmental field as a technician working with the Mandrake Lab at the University of Toronto. Craig had such a great experience that he knew this was the kind of work that he wanted to do and decided to continue his journey on at Fleming, where he lectured for several courses and became both a faculty member for the Fish and Wildlife program, as well as a walking encyclopedia of ecosystem knowledge. During Craig's summers off, he worked at Credit Valley Conservation Authority, running their fish monitoring program. These were some pretty crazy years for Craig, as he was never at home and often had to make a dreaded 3 a.m. drive from London to Lindsay to lecture for an 8 a.m. class. Needless to say, late students did not get much sympathy from Craig. So 3 years later, when a job offer for a water quality technician came up a little closer to home at Clair Region Conservation Authority, Craig applied, was hired, and since then has risen through the ranks to become the current acting manager of biology. Craig and his team do a wide range of work in the very biodiverse Sydenham watershed, monitoring and helping a wide range of species like fishes, mussels, turtles, and snakes, ensuring good water quality and leading stewardship activities. When Craig isn't working, he enjoys training for triathlons and Ironmans, playing soccer, sipping a nice cup of tea, taking care of a growing number of farm animals, and dressing up in a snazzy outfit for a night out on the town. On behalf of the FishCAST community, I would like to thank Craig for joining us and sharing his knowledge with us today. And with that, I welcome Craig to take the stage.
Well, thanks, Dom. What a stellar invitation. I did not commit a murder. We'll just start with that. Okay, I'll share my screen. And can someone let me know if that's okay? We can see. Excellent. All right. Well, I'll kick things off then. So yeah, thanks for that, Dom. It sounds pretty good when you put it all together like that. I've never actually heard it in one paragraph. So yes, my name's Craig. I'm a conservation biologist and acting manager now at St. Clair Region Conservation Authority. And I've pulled this presentation together to sort of give you a bit of information on conservation authorities because they're unique to Ontario. And also touch on some of the work that Dominique mentioned we do with fishes, mussels, and turtles. And also to delve a little bit into that sort of very obscure career path that Dom alluded to. So to begin, I'm going to be talking a lot about boundaries, jurisdictions, and stuff like that. But first and foremost, we need to acknowledge that the land and water we're on is on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape-Wauk, and Chinunktons people. And that's particular to the area in which I work. And I always like to take this opportunity to remind people that this isn't just some checkbox item that you see people say to kick off events. This is a reminder of a commitment to a continued relationship because every single one of us are treaty people. So to kick things off, we got a little bit of a conservation authority history lesson. So a lot of people might associate the establishment of conservation authorities to the environmental movement in the 60s in North America. But that's not actually true. It was a little time before that. So there's sort of two main events that occurred that led to the act passing in 1946 for conservation authorities, which is the Grand River Commission in 1930 and the Guelph Conference in 1942. So all that bureaucracy eventually led to the establishment of CAs. And why is that? Well, it was quite forward thinking. It was these organizations were in the best positions to deal with environmental degradation in the province. There's 36 of them, and you can see from this map that they span right the way across southern Ontario. And they're based on watershed boundaries, not political boundaries. So it's all about where the water flows. And like many organizations, there's usually a head organization. So Conservation Ontario is the umbrella, and they sort of act as best they can the conduit between the province and us. And then I've mentioned Hurricane Hazel here. This is whenever you hear conservation authorities refer to that 100-year event, this is the storm that kind of did it. So we've got 138 million in damages in the 50s, which looks at about 1.5 billion in 2023. So a big event, and that's where we sort of get those measures from. Delving a little bit closer into my conservation authority, I mean, there's lots of them, and it's not a competition, but we are the best one. This is our area surrounded by some pretty significant water bodies. So we have sort of the main river that we focus on is the Sydenham. We have two main branches. They meet at the confluence in Wallaceburg. Very strange place to build a town at the confluence of two major rivers. And then these merge into the main Sid, which only flows for about 5 kilometers until it outlets into the Schnellerkar. And the Sydenham watershed drains a large area of Lake St. Clair and on a wider scale into Lake Erie. So we're dealing with some pretty major watersheds and drainages. Looking a bit more into the area and where I work. So I actually work the only major watershed that lies completely in the Canadian Carolinian life zone. And if you're not familiar with this area, it's an area of immense diversity due to the number of frost-free days and higher annual temperatures. Now, the Sydenham River itself, particularly the East Branch, is the most mussel diverse in the country, not just the province, across the whole of Canada, where we have 63% of the Canadian species of freshwater mussels can be found in the Sydenham. Similarly for fish, with a very diverse mussel community, you're going to have a diverse fish community. So Ontario is home to about 129 freshwater fishes, and the Sydenham hosts about 80 plus, around 83 different individuals, which accounts for 62% of Ontario fishes that occur in this river. So we're talking some serious diversity here. And with that diversity in mind, it comes as no surprise that in 2017, the Sydenham was designated as one of 13 freshwater key biodiversity areas in Canada by the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. So this is global recognition. And these are areas that are contributing significantly to the global persistence of biodiversity. So I'm trying to set the scene here. This is a significant system. Unfortunately, it's not all diversity and happiness. The area we work is affected by numerous different threats and stresses. So forests and wetlands make up less than 15% of the land use. This is not enough to sustain a healthy environment. We are highly dominated by agriculture. And due to that dominance in agriculture, we have a lot of municipal drains. So 2/3 of all water courses within the watershed are municipal drains. And that adds up, the last time this was measured is 4,700 kilometers, which is almost a flight back to Wales for me. And this map on the left is an illustration of all the municipal drains. So changes on the landscape and changes in our waters. So we sort of set the scene now, and I'm going to delve into some of the work we do, and I'm going to focus on 3 main areas: freshwater fishes, freshwater mussels, and freshwater turtles. And as we go through, I've included something I call the trainee skill circle. So in each of these different disciplines, I'm going to touch on some of the skills that you will need to gain, you might already have, or look to perfect through your journey and through your career. So freshwater fishes. 83% of freshwater vertebrates populations have declined since the 1970s, with 1/3 facing extinction. So it's very important that in a system that has high diversity like this, that we monitor and we know what's going on. And we do this through fish community assessments. We have some long-term index sites. Drain classification for all those drains I just mentioned is a huge process. And we sort of do some consulting work as well, where we do fish salvages, where there's in-water work and we go and save all the fish so then they can work in the water. Just on the right there is our 10 species at risk that we have in the Sydenham. Some really unique species that I'm not going to go into too much detail right now. But I will showcase some more of the diversity in the SID. And I've purposely left the names off these so all the fish nerds can get super excited and try to debate which species is which. So in the question time, I'm happy to go back and go through this. But as you can see, all the different body shapes, all the different niches that are filled, it's a remarkable system. So how do we do this work? So I'm just going to move one thing. So lots of different method types, lots of different skills. We have the infamous electrofishing. We use seine and use passive techniques by setting fyke nets. So looking at that first trainee skills circle, there's some of the most obvious ones, but then there's some that are a little off cuff. So logistics. How well are you at planning things? If I give you a limited resources with weather contingencies and money, can you get a project done? Something very important to think about. Conflict resolution. So most of you are probably master's students, PhD students, or in university, and you're with all like-minded folk that care about the environment. Yay, species at risk, let's protect them. And then you get out into the world and you deal with landowners that hate species at risk and don't want them on their property and will do anything to get rid of them. So there's just that conflict that you will evidently come across in this space. Working in waders, a simple one. What is the longest duration you've spent in a pair of waders? And then adaptability. How well can you adapt to changing situations? I could probably give you an entire presentation of all the issues that Dominique and I have faced in much of our field work. Things will go wrong.
You hit mute.
Thank you. What did you miss? Freshwater mussel monitoring bit? Yeah, okay, right on. Okay, so in North America, mussels are being hit particularly hard. So 70% of approximately 300 species are showing evidence of declines. So it's sort of that trend with freshwater fish as well. So again, we do lots of work to monitor as best we can. We do qualitative and quantitative surveys and also exploratory surveys because a lot of the time we simply don't know where all the species are. We don't have a complete map of the distributions. And here's another slide just showing the diversity. Again, I've left the names off to get all the mussel nerds excited. But you can just see the beauty and the difference in diversity that we have here. Now, the methods we do for this are lovingly called raccooning, which is just a fancy term for crawling around on the river bottom, deciding what's rock and what's mussel. Quadrats are these 1 by 1 meter squares that we place down, and we can do density estimates from them, which is the quantitative side. And then the more qualitative side is time search surveys, in which we have about 4.5 person hours. We spread out in the river, and you capture as many mussels as you possibly can to get a good idea of the community that's there. And I just wanted to touch on one of the projects that we're currently doing. So it's the North Sydenham River Mussel Host Inventory. A lot of the designations and the diversity comes from the East Syd. It's a very highly studied area, but the North Syd isn't so much. And from that top left photo, you can see that we're targeting these tributaries that are surrounded by agriculture with a strip of riparian zone left and trying to figure out what communities are there. A lot of the recovery strategies state that they don't have these distributions mapped. So trainee skills in terms of the mussel side of things, you've got the usual identification, anatomy, and dichotomous keys. But again, logistics comes up. Planning this project was a nightmare. We had to do 40 different site visits to find 10 sites that were suitable to sample. It's a lot of work, very difficult. Working in water. What's the longest time you spent standing in a river, in a wetland, boating in a lake? How do you know how to move through intense flows? When is it too fast to go in? All these questions that come up, the skills you need to be successful. Fitness and stamina. And I know this is coming from the guy that does triathlons and so on and so forth, but there is a certain level of fitness and stamina to field work that you'll need to be successful. And then again, adaptability, because lots of things will go wrong. Now we're switching to everybody's favorite, which are the turtles. But even though they're everybody's favorite, approximately 61% of the world's 356 turtle species are threatened or already extinct, which is a stat that just crushes me every time I read it. And if we sort of dial that focus into Ontario with a simple 3-column chart and a splash of color, you can see that our native turtles are not doing great with every single species on the list. So what are we doing at St. Clair to change this? Well, one of the most vulnerable times for a turtle is nesting, where they lay their eggs. And eggs are being destroyed at an alarming rate, so the recruitment to the population isn't happening. So in 2016, the Conservation Authority developed a captive hatch and release program, which protects those eggs through the process of collection, and then we incubate them with our biggest supporters, the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority, Scott Gillenwater, and we then release those turtles back into the wild. And you might be thinking, oh, that's really glamorous, but this is just a short time lapse. I hope it's playing okay of what the work looks like. It's an intense grind. This day, I remember this when it was about 42 degrees. My phone died, couldn't keep up with the heat. So it's a short one. But this is what saving a species from extinction looks like. So once we've collected these eggs, we then process them, ready in little plastic containers to head to the incubator. And in about 60 days, we get bins full of baby turtles, which is a fantastic event. But obviously something we shouldn't really have to be doing in the wild. Now I'm just sharing some little stats with you about the work. This is not an increase in the population. It's a very basic chart for all the masters and PhD folks. It's simply showing that how good we are at getting and finding these eggs and protecting the ones. So the blue one is particularly, it's our target species, spiny softshell. There's only estimated to be 1,000 of these left in the wild in the whole of Canada. And we target that species specifically because in some of the nesting areas, we have a predation rate of 99%. So without this program, they're evidently going to go extinct. And trainee skills coming to this side of things. So resilience. From a couple of those stats I've just showed you, the freshwater communities are drowning in declines. It's across the board. And this takes a toll on your mental health. Going to work every single day, dealing with species that are declining, much of the time we know the reasons why or have a good idea, and nothing's getting done and nothing's changing. And this takes its toll. And it's taught me how to build resilience and to be as resilient as the species that I'm trying to save. A bit more lighthearted, wildlife handling. If I give you a snapping turtle, do you know how to handle it versus a map turtle? If I handed you a bowfin versus a mad tom, how would you handle those? They're all skills that you generally can't develop unless you're simply doing the work. And then working heat. In southwestern Ontario, the summers are insane. We're in this heat dome. It's very humid, and we have to get this work done. So what are some of the things and methods you use to keep cool, especially when you're in waders, which is like wearing a greenhouse up to your chest? And then again, some similar ones, logistics, fitness, stamina, and adaptability. And then there's everything else we do. So stewardship and restoration is a large part. The Conservation Authority has planted 4 million trees and restored about 100 hectares of wetland. We do water quality, communication and outreach. One of my colleagues has been developing the phosphorus management plan to deal with the huge phosphorus load that's heading into Lake St. Clair and Lake Erie. We do benthic macroinvertebrates, so we monitor them to look at water quality. We're currently undertaking a SAR threat assessment to really look at those stresses on the land that are affecting what's happening in the water. We also do snake monitoring for the eastern fox snake and endangered species, where we have artificial nesting structures that we monitor, providing habitat for them to lay their eggs and have their young. And then every 5 years, we produce the watershed report card, which is not a bad attempt at sort of revealing the impact across the watershed over 5 years of various different variables. And I know this is FishCAST, not MusselCast or TurtleCast, but from the AGM, I noticed that this sort of is diversifying out. There's people doing work on all these different things. And the reason I've included this slide is just to simply state that you might not be able to find work or a career in the field that you studied. You might be solely focused on this one type of fish, but when you get out there, it's totally different, and you'll need to diversify your skills most of the time to be able to keep that employment to eventually reach whatever the niches you want to fill. So that's the work. I've set the scene. I've touched on some of the work that I do and my colleagues do and we do at the CA. So this is that sort of the personal career side. So controversially, sort of suffer with imposter syndrome, knowing that I don't have a biology degree, I don't have a master's, I don't have a PhD, but I'm currently running a biology department in Ontario. And this doesn't mean that everybody who's currently doing a master's or PhD or an undergrad in biology should say, why the heck am I doing it? I can, if Craig didn't do it and gets this job, then I'll just do that. This took an incredible amount of self-learning, and I did require to go back to school to gain some of the skills and get my foot in the door. And that school was Fleming College. So this is up in Lindsay, Ontario. I took the Fish and Wildlife program. So it's a 2-year program with the opportunity to do a 3rd year, which can fast track you to a 2 years Bachelor of Science at certain universities, so in 5 years, you have a diploma, an advanced diploma, and a Bachelor of Science. I wish that existed in Wales, because I would have done it in a heartbeat. And then there's some other great programs that are going on there as well. And I found that students that have a BSc and a diploma are exemplary biologists, and their applications really stand out when they're looking for work. Now, this is the stereotypical career path slide. Don went through this a little bit, but I'll just add and frame some more detail and give you some more information. So I always don't find these, I find these not that helpful in the sense that every single path is different, and it's an absolute adventure to try to find a career. So I have the Bachelor of Science in Police Sciences, a Fleming College graduate, and then my first gig at the Mandrake Lab, which I had to pinch myself, and then bouncing back and forth between Fleming College teaching and Credit Valley doing some fish work, and then eventually hit St. Clair. And this is a list. It's linear. It is not. It is all over the place. And then one thing I found is often in this field, being the scientist is not enough. We find ourselves being the biologists, the technicians, the advocates, the communicators, the educators, the mentors, the fundraisers, the accountants, the grant writers, and even that guy that always has to carry the bloody canoe. And there are a set of trainee skills that all these different avenues require of you, and they're difficult to gain without simply doing them. So public speaking, presentations, writing grant apps, there's nothing you can prepare for that other than doing one. Fundraising, because not all this work is funded, event organization, public relations, which is so important, and then science communication. And then none of this is possible at all without our partners in conservation, which ranges from the feds to the province, to the municipalities, to our Indigenous partners, to schools, colleges, universities, to FishCAST, energy companies, financial institutions, other conservation authorities, and just the general public. It's a huge plethora that we work with to make this work happen. But if there's one thing I can leave you with, I've kind of hit on a lot of declines, and I often get called Ranger Craig, which is the miserable person that brings all the reality. There's one thing I could leave you with, it's enjoy yourself, because we get to work with some of the most remarkable species in some of the most remarkable ecosystems and habitats on the planet. And I'm always grateful that I'm in the space that I am. Now, with one shameless plug for our website that we've worked very hard on during the pandemic years, and our annual newsletter that comes out sort of March every year. If you want to know anything about the SID head here, I often refer to this when people ask me questions. I think it's a really good resource. And I believe I am there and ready for some questions.
That was wonderful, Craig. Thank you so much. Anyone want to put in the chat which turtle this is? Let's see who gets there first. You know, I'd love to open in the floor to questions. And oh, Emily's saying spider.